I cared for my paralyzed mother-in-law for 2 years. Then I caught her walking at 2 a.m. My husband Matt came through the front door with his phone still pressed to his ear, and I knew something was wrong before he even opened his mouth. His eyebrows pulled together and his lips pressed into a thin line. The look that meant bad news was coming, and I was expected to fix it. Mom got hit by a car, he said after he hung up. The doctors are saying she might not walk again. Something about her spine. I hugged him and asked if there was anything I could do. Normal wife stuff. She can't live alone anymore, Matt said into my shoulder. She's going to need someone to take care of her full time. I pulled back. We can look into home health aides or a rehabilitation facility. Matt shook his head. His jaw tightened in that way it did when he'd already made up his mind. She's my mom, Aurora. I'm not shipping her off to some facility. She needs to be with family. I could feel where this was going. We have the extra bedroom, he continued. You work remote. It's temporary, just until she adjusts. Matt, your mother doesn't even like me. She's made that clear for 4 years. She's changed. She told me herself. She said she wants to make things right with you. He grabbed my hands. This is our chance to finally be a real family. All of us. Together. In this beautiful house your grandparents left you. Something about the way he said that last part stuck with me. But his eyes were red and he looked like a little boy who just found out the world wasn't fair. So I did what I always did. I put my feelings aside and told him we'd figure it out together. Sandy moved in 3 weeks later. She'd refused to let us visit her while she recovered. Said she was too embarrassed to have anyone see her like that. Said she needed time to process before she could face family. Matt thought it was understandable. I thought it was strange, but I kept my mouth shut. Matt wheeled her through the front door in a wheelchair she said she'd bought herself because the hospital ones were uncomfortable. She looked smaller than I remembered. Her legs sat motionless under a blanket, and her hands gripped the armrests like she was afraid of falling. Thank you so much for having me, Sandy said when Matt positioned her in the living room. She grabbed my hand and squeezed it with both of hers. I know we haven't always seen eye to eye, but I'm so grateful you're willing to open your home to me. Of course, I said. Your family. This house is just lovely. Sandy looked around the room with an expression I couldn't quite read. Your grandparents had wonderful taste. Matt told me they left it to you free and clear. No mortgage. That must be such a relief. It is. You're very lucky. Most young couples struggle for years to afford something like this. She squeezed my hand again. And now you're sharing it with me. That's so generous. Her voice was sweet. Her smile was warm. Her eyes crinkled at the corners like she genuinely meant every word. But when Matt turned away to grab more bags from the car, Sandy's grip on my hand tightened just a little too hard. Her smile stayed exactly the same, but her eyes changed. They got sharper, colder, like she was looking at something she'd been waiting a very long time to destroy. Then Matt came back and Sandy's eyes went soft again. She patted my hand and asked if it would be too much trouble to get her a glass of water. I went to the kitchen and stood at the sink. This was my house. The house my grandparents left me when they passed. The house I'd grown up visiting every summer. They'd saved their whole lives to buy this place, and they'd left it to me because they knew how much I loved it. And now Sandy was sitting in my living room asking about my mortgage. I brought her the water with a smile. She thanked me and called me sweetheart and told Matt he'd found himself a good one. Matt beamed at both of us like we were finally becoming the family he'd always wanted. Sandy moved into my house, the house my grandparents left me. She smiled when Matt carried her bags in, thanked me for being so generous, told me how grateful she was. But I saw the way she looked at me when she thought I wasn't watching. This wasn't gratitude. This was something else. I didn't know what she was planning yet, but I knew one thing for certain. Whatever game Sandy thought she was playing, she picked the wrong daughter-in-law. The first week was hard. The second week was harder. By the third week, I couldn't remember what my life looked like before Sandy moved in. My entire existence had narrowed down to a series of tasks that never ended. Wake up, change Sandy, feed Sandy, bathe Sandy, entertain Sandy, put Sandy to bed, repeat forever. My alarm went off at 6 every morning. Not because I wanted to wake up that early, but because Sandy needed to be changed before she developed bed sores. I'd drag myself out of bed while Matt slept peacefully beside me and shuffle down the hallway to the room that used to be my home office. The room where I used to work on projects I cared about. The room where I used to feel like myself. Now it smelled like medicine, an old person, and something else I couldn't quite identify. Sandy was always awake when I got there. Always watching the door like she'd been waiting for me. Always with that same sweet smile that never quite reached her eyes. She'd greet me the same way every morning like we were reading from a script. Good morning, sweetheart, she'd say in that sugary voice. I hope I didn't wake you with my tossing and turning. I tried to be quiet, but you know how it is when you can't move your legs. You just lay there and stare at the ceiling all night. It's torture, really. But I don't want to complain. You're already doing so much for me. The first time I changed her, I cried in the bathroom afterward for 20 minutes. Not because it was gross, although it definitely was, but because I was 29 years old, and I'd just given up my entire life to become a full-time caretaker for a woman who had openly told her friends I wasn't good enough for her son. A woman who had made my wedding day miserable. A woman who had spent 4 years finding ways to make me feel small and worthless. And now I was wiping her like a baby, and she was thanking me with that smile that made my skin crawl. Matt had convinced me to quit my job 2 weeks after Sandy moved in. He sat me down one night after Sandy went to sleep and explained why it made sense. He said I was already working from home anyway, so it wasn't like I'd miss the office. He said Sandy needed someone there all the time, and we couldn't afford to hire a professional caretaker. He said his salary could cover our bills since we didn't have a mortgage payment thanks to my grandparents. He said it would only be temporary until Sandy adjusted and we figured out a better solution. "You're the only one she trusts," he told me when I tried to push back. "She doesn't want strangers touching her. She barely even wants me helping her because she's embarrassed. But she likes you, Aurora. She told me herself. She said you're the daughter she never had." I almost laughed in his face when he said that. Sandy had called me a lot of things over the years, but daughter was never one of them. Gold digger, social climber, that woman. Those were the words she used when she didn't think I could hear. Those were the words she whispered to her friends at family gatherings while I stood in the kitchen pretending not to notice. But Matt looked so hopeful standing there, so convinced that his mother had finally come around, so desperate to believe that everything was going to work out, and I was so tired of fighting battles I never won. So I quit my job and became Sandy's full-time nurse and tried to tell myself it was the right thing to do. The bathing was the worst part of my new life. Every other day I had to lift Sandy's dead weight from the wheelchair to the shower bench. She couldn't help at all, according to her. Just sat there limp while I strained my back trying not to drop her. I'd wash her hair and scrub her body and try not to think about how my own grandmother had warned me about Sandy at my wedding reception. "That woman has ice in her veins," Grandma Rose had whispered to me while we stood by the cake table. "I've seen her type before. She'll smile at you while she's sharpening the knife. Don't ever trust her, Aurora. Don't ever let your guard down around her." Grandma Rose passed away 6 months after my wedding. She left me this house and enough money to pay off my student loans completely. Matt had been so excited when we moved in. He kept talking about how perfect it was, how we'd never have to worry about rent or mortgage payments, how this was our fresh start as a married couple, how lucky we were that my grandparents had worked so hard their whole lives so we could benefit from it now. I should have paid more attention to how interested he was in the inheritance. I should have noticed the way his eyes lit up whenever he talked about the house or the money. But I was in love and I was stupid and I thought he loved me too. The feeding took forever every single day. Sandy had very specific requirements about what she could eat and how it needed to be prepared. Soft foods only because she claimed her jaw hurt from the accident. Cut into tiny pieces because she said she had trouble swallowing. Served at exactly the right temperature because anything too hot or too cold made her stomach upset. If anything was even slightly off, she'd push the plate away and sigh dramatically and say she just wasn't hungry. "It's fine," she'd say when I offered to make something else. "I'll just skip this meal. Don't worry about me. I know I'm already such a burden to you. The last thing I want to do is cause more trouble by being picky about food. I'll survive. I always do." Then she'd look at me with those sad puppy dog eyes, and I'd spend another hour in the kitchen trying to make something she'd actually eat. And the whole time I'd feel like a monster for being tired. Like I was the worst person in the world for wanting 5 minutes to myself. Like I should be grateful for the opportunity to serve this woman who had never shown me an ounce of genuine kindness. The guilt trips were constant and relentless. Sandy had a way of making everything I did feel insufficient. If I cooked her breakfast, she'd mention how her own mother used to make breakfast for her every morning without ever complaining. If I helped her into the wheelchair, she'd wince and say I was too rough, even though I was being as gentle as possible. If I took a 15-minute break to eat my own lunch, she'd call for me constantly with increasingly urgent requests, until I gave up and went back to tending to her needs. "You're so lucky," she told me one afternoon while I was rubbing lotion on her legs to prevent dry skin. "You get to stay home all day in this beautiful house. No commute, no boss breathing down your neck, no coworkers to deal with. Some people would kill for this life. Some people would be grateful to have what you have." I bit my tongue so hard I tasted blood. I wanted to scream at her. I wanted to tell her that this wasn't a life, it was a prison sentence. I wanted to remind her that I used to have a career and friends and hobbies and a sense of self that didn't revolve around changing her adult diapers. But I didn't say any of that. I just kept rubbing the lotion and nodding along like the good little caretaker I'd become. She loved reminding me about the wedding. Little comments here and there that sounded innocent if you didn't know the history between us. She'd be watching television and suddenly mention how beautiful the flowers were at my reception. Such a shame I wasn't involved in choosing them. She'd add with a sad little sigh. "I have wonderful taste in floral arrangements. Everyone says so. But you wanted what you wanted and that's fine. It was your day after all. I was just the groom's mother. What do I know?" Or she'd be flipping through a magazine and stop on a picture of a wedding cake. "This reminds me of yours," she'd say thoughtfully. "Although yours was a bit plain, don't you think? I would have added more layers, more detail, more elegance. But you were on a budget, I suppose. Can't expect champagne taste on a beer budget, as they say." 4 years later, and she was still bitter about the wedding. 4 years of holding on to that grudge like it was the most precious thing she owned. I'd told her she couldn't control the guest list. I'd told her the wedding was about me and Matt, not about her. I'd told her no when she demanded I change the venue and the flowers and the music and everything else she wanted to change. And apparently she'd never forgiven me for any of it. About 8 months into taking care of her, she caught me completely off guard. I was brushing her hair before bed like I did every night, and she was being unusually quiet. Usually she'd use this time to complain about something or tell me stories about Matt's childhood that were clearly designed to make me feel inadequate. But this night she was silent, just sitting there looking at herself in the mirror with a thoughtful expression. Then she caught my eye in the reflection and smiled. A different kind of smile than usual. Softer. More vulnerable. You know, she said in a quiet voice, I never did apologize for how I acted at your wedding. I was awful that day. Just awful. I said things I shouldn't have said. I made a scene when I should have been celebrating my son's happiness. I was selfish and petty, and I'm ashamed of myself. I froze with the brush in my hand. Sandy had never once acknowledged her behavior at my wedding. Not in 4 years. Not even close. She'd always acted like everything she did was perfectly justified, and I was the one being unreasonable for being upset about it. I was just so scared of losing my son, she continued. Her voice got thick like she was about to cry. He's all I have in this world, Aurora. After his father left when Matt was just a baby, I put everything into raising that boy. Every ounce of energy I had went into making sure he had a good life. And then you came along and suddenly he didn't need me anymore. He had you. I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to believe her. Part of me desperately wanted this to be real. Part of me had been waiting 4 years for Sandy to acknowledge what she'd done and apologize for it. I know I made your wedding day harder than it should have been, Sandy said. She reached up and patted my hand where it rested on her shoulder. I know I didn't make you feel welcome in this family. And I'm sorry. I truly am. You didn't deserve that. You've never deserved any of the awful things I've said and done to you. I felt tears burning in my eyes. After 4 years of coldness and judgment and thinly veiled insults, Sandy was finally apologizing. Maybe Matt was right all along. Maybe she really had changed. Maybe almost dying in that accident had given her a new perspective on life. Maybe we could actually be a real family now. Thank you, I said quietly. That means a lot to me. Sandy smiled at me in the mirror, but there was something in her expression that didn't quite match her words. Something hard underneath the softness. Something that looked almost like satisfaction. Like she'd accomplished something she'd been working toward. I just want us to be a real family, she said sweetly. Don't you want that too? I nodded and finished brushing her hair and helped her into bed. I kissed her forehead the way she always asked me to and turned off the light and closed the door behind me. Then I walked into the kitchen and found Matt eating cereal over the sink like he always did when he thought I wasn't looking. We need to hire help, I said. The words came out sharper than I intended, but I was too tired to care. A home health aide. Someone to give me a break. Even just a few hours a week so I can remember what it feels like to be a human being instead of a full-time nurse. Matt set down his cereal bowl and looked at me with that expression he got when I was inconveniencing him. The slight tightening around his eyes. The tiny downturn of his mouth, the way his shoulders pulled back like he was bracing for an argument he didn't want to have. We talked about this, he said. We can't afford it. We can afford it. We don't have a mortgage payment. We barely have any bills. Your salary covers everything with money left over every month. We can absolutely afford a few hours of professional help. It's not just about money. Matt's voice got that edge to it, the one that meant I was pushing too hard and needed to back off. My mom doesn't want strangers in the house. She barely tolerates me helping her. If we bring in some random person she doesn't know, she's going to feel violated and humiliated. I'm not doing that to her after everything she's been through. And what about me? I could feel my voice rising, but I couldn't stop it. I feel violated every single day, Matt. I've given up my career. I've given up my friends. I've given up any semblance of a normal life to take care of your mother around the clock. And you won't even consider hiring someone to give me a few hours off each week. Matt's jaw clenched tight. Don't yell at me. I've had a long day at work and I don't need to come home to this. I'm not yelling. I'm telling you that I'm drowning here. I need help. I need my husband to actually support me for once instead of just expecting me to handle everything by myself. And I need you to understand that my mother is going through something traumatic. She was hit by a car, Aurora. She lost the ability to walk. She's dealing with enough without you adding guilt and resentment to her situation. So I should just keep suffering in silence. Is that what you're saying? I should just smile and pretend everything is fine while my entire life falls apart? Matt slammed his hand on the counter. The sound echoed through the kitchen and made me flinch backward. He'd never done anything like that before. In 4 years of marriage, he'd never raised his voice or hit anything or showed any sign of physical anger. Maybe, he said in a low, dangerous voice, the problem isn't my mother. Maybe the problem is you. I stared at him across the kitchen. What is that supposed to mean? It means you've been paranoid and negative since the day she moved in. It means you look for reasons to be upset about everything. It means you're so determined to hate her that you can't see she's actually trying to make things work between you two. I don't hate her. I'm exhausted. There's a difference. You're always exhausted. You're always complaining. You're always finding something wrong with everything I do and everything she does. He shook his head with disgust. I thought we were building a family here. I thought you wanted that too. But clearly I was wrong. I do want that. But I also want a partner who listens to me, who believes me when I tell him I'm struggling, who doesn't dismiss everything I say because his mother told him a different story. Matt was quiet for a long moment. Then he sighed and rubbed his eyes like I was giving him a headache just by existing. Maybe you need to talk to someone, he said finally. A therapist. Someone who can help you work through whatever's going on in your head. Because this constant negativity is not healthy, Aurora. It's not normal. And I'm starting to worry about you. I felt like I'd been slapped across the face. My own husband was standing in front of me suggesting I needed therapy because I'd asked for help with his mother. Like I was the one with the problem. Like I was the one who was broken. Fine, I said quietly. I'll figure it out myself. I walked past him and went to the bedroom and closed the door. I didn't sleep that night. I just lay there in the dark, listening to Matt snoring beside me and wondering how my life had gotten so small so fast. But something else happened that night too. Something I couldn't ignore no matter how hard I tried. Around 3 in the morning, I got up to use the bathroom. I was walking past Sandy's room when I heard movement inside. Not tossing and turning like someone who couldn't sleep. Something else. Something that sounded almost like footsteps moving across the floor. I stopped outside her door and listened with my heart pounding in my chest. The sound stopped immediately. Like whoever was making it suddenly realized someone was there and froze. I stood in that hallway for a full minute holding my breath. Then I shook my head and told myself I was imagining things. Sleep deprivation does strange things to your brain. I was exhausted and stressed and paranoid. Just like Matt said, I was hearing things that weren't there. But over the next few weeks, I started noticing other things. Things that didn't add up no matter how I looked at them. Sandy's legs had muscle tone. I'd been washing and lotioning them for months. I knew exactly what they looked like. And they didn't look like legs that hadn't moved in over a year. The muscles were firm and defined like someone who exercised regularly. When I'd researched paralysis online, everything said that unused muscles atrophy and waste away within months. Sandy's legs looked better than mine. Her foot moved during a transfer one morning. I was lifting her from the bed to the wheelchair and her left foot pushed against the mattress. Just for a second. Just enough to help her scoot forward. Then it went limp again like nothing happened. Like her body had acted on reflex and then remembered it wasn't supposed to. Her body shifted positions when I left the room. I'd position her a certain way in bed and come back 10 minutes later and she'd be in a completely different position. Not dramatically different, but different enough that she'd have to have moved herself somehow. Different enough that a paralyzed person couldn't have managed it. I brought it up to Matt one night after Sandy went to sleep. I chose my words carefully because I knew how he'd react. I think something's going on with your mom, I said. I've been noticing some things that don't quite add up. Things that seem strange for someone with her condition. Matt looked up from his phone with a bored expression. What kind of things? Her legs. They have muscle tone. Way more than they should have after over a year of not walking or moving at all. And I've seen her foot move. And sometimes she's in a different position than I left her in when I come back into the room. Matt stared at me for a long moment. Then he laughed. Not a nice laugh. A dismissive, condescending laugh that made me feel 2 inches tall. Are you serious right now? He said. You think my paralyzed mother is what? Faking being paralyzed? Is that really what you're trying to say to me? I'm not saying that exactly. I'm saying something doesn't add up and I think we should at least look into it. Maybe take her to see a specialist or something. Take her to see a specialist because you think she's lying about being paralyzed. Do you hear how crazy that sounds coming out of your mouth? It's not crazy. I'm telling you what I've observed with my own 2 eyes. Matt put down his phone and rubbed his temples like I was the source of all his headaches. Aurora, you're exhausted. You've been under a lot of stress for a long time. I think maybe you're seeing things that aren't actually there. Your brain is playing tricks on you. I know what I saw. Do you though? Because it sounds like you're looking for reasons to be upset. It sounds like you're so unhappy with the situation that you're inventing problems to justify your feelings about my mother. I'm not inventing anything. Matt stood up and walked over to where I was sitting. He put his hands on my shoulders and looked into my eyes with that concerned expression that always made me feel like a child being scolded by a patient parent. Maybe you should talk to someone, he said gently, about your mental health. Because accusing my paralyzed mother of faking her injury is not a normal thing to think, Aurora. That's not something a healthy person would say. I'm worried about you. I wanted to scream at him. I wanted to grab him by the shoulders and shake him until he actually heard the words coming out of my mouth. I wanted to make him see what I was seeing. But I could tell from the look on his face that nothing I said would matter. He'd already decided I was the crazy one. He'd already picked his mother's side without even considering that I might be right. Fine, I said quietly. Maybe I'm wrong. Matt kissed my forehead like I was a child who needed comforting. You're just tired. Get some rest. Things will look different in the morning. I promise. He went to bed and I sat in the living room for a long time staring at the wall and thinking about everything that had happened. Matt didn't believe me. He thought I was losing my mind. He thought I was so broken by exhaustion that I was making up elaborate lies about his precious mother. But I knew what I saw. I knew Sandy's foot pushed against that mattress. I knew her muscles shouldn't look like that. I knew something was very wrong with this entire situation. And if my husband wasn't going to help me find the truth, I was going to have to find it myself, no matter what it took. Matt called me paranoid, exhausted, said I was imagining things. Maybe I needed to see someone about my mental health. He picked his mother over me without even blinking. But here's what neither of them understood. I wasn't crazy. I knew what I saw with my own eyes. And if my husband wouldn't help me find the truth about what was really going on, I'd find it myself. I started testing Sandy the very next day. Small things at first. Things that could be explained away as accidents or coincidences if I was wrong. I needed to be sure before I accused anyone of anything. I'd drop something heavy near her feet and watch for a reaction. A pot lid on the tile floor. A book off the shelf. Anything that would make a loud, sudden noise. I'd leave her pills on the far side of the table instead of right in front of her where she could reach them. I'd make sudden, loud noises when she thought I wasn't paying attention to her. Sandy was good at her act. I'll give her that much credit. She was really good at pretending to be helpless. Every time I tested her, she'd sit there with that blank expression like nothing had happened, like the noise hadn't startled her, like she hadn't even noticed. But she wasn't perfect. Nobody is perfect at pretending all the time. The first real slip happened on a Tuesday morning. I was making lunch in the kitchen and I deliberately dropped a pot lid on the tile floor. The crash was loud enough to make me jump even though I was expecting it. Loud enough to echo through the whole house. From the living room, I heard Sandy gasp. Not a normal surprised gasp. A startled gasp. The kind where your whole body flinches because the sound scared you. The kind of reaction that involves your legs tensing up reflexively, even if you don't want them to. I walked into the living room with a concerned expression painted on my face. Everything okay in here? I dropped something in the kitchen. Sorry about the noise. Sandy was sitting exactly where I'd left her in the wheelchair, but her hands were gripping the armrests so tight her knuckles had turned white. Her shoulders were up around her ears like she'd tensed her entire body. Like every muscle had reacted to the sound, including the ones that supposedly didn't work anymore. I'm fine, sweetheart, she said in that perfectly calm voice. Just the noise startled me is all. You know how us old ladies are. Jumpy about everything. I smiled and nodded and went back to the kitchen, but I noticed something before I left. Her legs were positioned differently than before. Just slightly. Like she'd drawn them up instinctively when she heard the crash and hadn't quite gotten them back to the right position before I walked in. Like her body had betrayed her for just a second before she remembered she was supposed to be paralyzed. I filed that information away and kept watching. The second slip happened about a week later. I'd put Sandy's afternoon pills on the nightstand across the room instead of on her bedside table where she could reach them. Then I told her I was going to take a long shower and I'd be back in about 20 minutes to check on her. I didn't take a shower. I stood in the hallway outside her door with my back pressed against the wall and waited. My heart was pounding so loud I was afraid she'd hear it through the door. For 10 minutes, nothing happened. Sandy lay in bed staring at the ceiling just like she always did when she thought I was watching. Patient. Still. The perfect picture of a paralyzed woman who couldn't do anything for herself. Then her head turned toward the nightstand, toward the pills that were too far away for her to reach without getting out of bed. I watched through the tiny crack where the door didn't quite close all the way. I saw Sandy push herself up on her elbows. I saw her eyes go to the hallway first, checking, making sure she was alone, making sure nobody was watching her. Then she started to move her legs. I held my breath so hard my lungs burned. Her left leg shifted under the blanket, then her right. She was getting ready to swing them over the side of the bed, getting ready to stand up and walk across the room like she'd probably been doing every single night when she thought everyone was asleep. Then she stopped. Her head whipped toward the door, toward me. I stepped back just in time, pressed myself flat against the wall, held perfectly still and didn't breathe. I heard her settle back into the pillows with a frustrated little sigh. Aurora, she called out in that sweet honey voice. I forgot to take my pills and they're all the way across the room. Would you mind bringing them to me when you're done with your shower? My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. I waited a full minute before responding so my voice wouldn't shake. Of course, I called back. Be right there. I took a fake shower, turned on the water and stood outside the bathroom door listening to the house. But Sandy didn't make any more attempts to move. She just lay there waiting for me like the helpless, paralyzed woman she was pretending to be. After that, I knew for certain. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't imagining things. I wasn't seeing things that weren't there like Matt kept insisting. Sandy could move her legs. Sandy could walk. And she'd been lying to all of us for almost 2 years. But knowing wasn't enough. I needed proof. Real, undeniable proof. I needed to catch her in the act so completely that Matt couldn't dismiss it as my exhaustion, or my paranoia, or my mental health problems. I needed to see it with my own eyes and make sure there was no other explanation. I came up with a plan. I told Sandy I was going to spend the night at my sister's place. I said I needed a mental health break after everything that had been going on. I said I'd been feeling overwhelmed lately, and I thought some time away from the house would help me reset and come back refreshed and ready to take care of her again. Sandy was sweeter than she'd ever been about it. Of course, sweetheart, she said, patting my hand with both of hers. Her touch made my skin crawl, but I kept smiling like nothing was wrong. You've been working so hard taking care of me. You deserve a break. Go be with your family. Have a glass of wine and relax. Don't worry about anything here. Matt and I will be just fine without you for one night. Matt seemed relieved when I told him my plan. Probably thought I'd come back in a better mood. More willing to accept my role as Sandy's personal servant. More willing to shut up about her legs and her movements and all the things I'd been noticing. This is good for you, he said, kissing my forehead. You need this. Take as much time as you need to feel better. I packed an overnight bag and kissed them both goodbye and drove away from my own house. I watched in the rearview mirror as Matt waved from the porch, and Sandy watched from the window with that smile that never reached her eyes. Then I parked 2 streets over where they couldn't see my car and waited. I sat there as the sun went down. I watched the sky turn orange and pink and purple and then finally dark. I watched the streetlights flicker on one by one. I watched the lights in my house go on and then off and then on again in different rooms. I watched shadows move behind the curtains like ghosts of the people who were supposed to love me. At 11:30, the house went completely dark. I waited another hour just to be absolutely sure. Sat there in the darkness going over my plan again and again, making sure I hadn't missed anything, making sure I was ready for whatever I was about to see. Then I got out of my car and walked back to my house. I used the side door that led into the laundry room, the one that didn't squeak because I'd oiled the hinges myself 3 months ago, when Sandy complained that the noise woke her up at night. I slipped off my shoes and walked through the laundry room in my socks. Every step felt like it took forever. My heart was beating so loud I was convinced they'd hear it through the walls. I made it to the hallway when I heard voices, not from the bedrooms, from the kitchen. Voices and laughter. I pressed myself against the wall and crept toward the sound. The kitchen light was on. I could see it spilling into the hallway through the open doorway. Yellow light cutting through the darkness like a knife. I got as close as I dared and peeked around the corner. Sandy was standing at the counter pouring herself a glass of wine. Standing. On her own 2 feet. Without the wheelchair anywhere in sight. Without any assistance at all. Just standing there like it was the most natural thing in the world. Matt sat at the kitchen table with a glass already in front of him. He was smiling and relaxed and leaning back in his chair like he didn't have a care in the world. Like his mother hadn't been pretending to be paralyzed for the past 2 years. Like this was completely normal behavior that happened every night. Like they'd been doing this the entire time. How much longer do you think we have to keep this up? Sandy asked as she brought her wine to the table. She walked perfectly. Smoothly. No limp. No hesitation. No sign of any injury at all. I'm getting sick of sitting in that wheelchair all day pretending I can't move. Not much longer, Matt said. He took a sip of his wine and smiled at his mother. She's close to breaking. I can feel it. The way she looks at me lately. The way she keeps pushing back and asking for help. The way she started noticing things. She's going to crack any day now. Good. Sandy sat down across from him and crossed her legs like it was nothing. Like she hadn't spent 2 years pretending she couldn't move them. I'm getting tired of this act. Do you have any idea how boring it is pretending to be helpless all day? I've watched more daytime television in the past 2 years than I've watched in my entire life combined. If I have to sit through one more cooking show or soap opera, I'm going to actually lose my mind. Matt laughed like she'd said the funniest thing in the world. It'll be worth it in the end. Once she files the papers, I get half of everything. The house, the inheritance money, all of it. We just have to be patient a little while longer. I felt like I'd been punched in the chest, like someone had reached into my body and squeezed all the air out of my lungs. The house, the money, my grandparents' legacy that they'd worked their whole lives to build, the inheritance they'd left me because they loved me. That's what this was about. That's what it had always been about. She should have let me plan the wedding, Sandy said. The fake sweetness was completely gone from her voice now. In its place was something hard and ugly, pure venom dripping from every single word. I told her exactly what I wanted. I gave her a list of reasonable requests. And she looked me in the eye and said it was her and Matt's day, and they were doing it their way. Like I didn't matter. Like I was nobody. I know, Mom. You've told me 100 times. 4 years. 4 years I've been waiting to make her pay for humiliating me like that. In front of everyone. In front of my friends and my family and everyone who mattered. She made me look like a fool and she didn't even care. She smiled while she did it. And now she's going to lose everything she has. Sandy smiled, and it was the ugliest smile I'd ever seen on a human face. Her whole expression transformed into something cruel and satisfied and completely inhuman. The beautiful part is she's going to do it to herself. She's going to file for divorce because she can't take being married to you anymore. Because we've made her life so miserable she'll do anything to escape. And then you get half of everything because she's the one who left. It's perfect. It's absolutely perfect. And she has no idea what's really going on. None at all. She thinks I actually need her. She thinks she's doing a good thing by taking care of me. Sandy laughed and took a long sip of her wine. She's been bathing me for 2 years, feeding me, changing me like a baby. And the whole time I've been perfectly healthy. The whole time I've been laughing at her behind her back while she destroyed herself taking care of me. I stood in that hallway with my back pressed against the wall. My hands were shaking. My whole body was shaking. I could feel tears burning in my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. 2 years. 2 years I'd given to that woman. 2 years of bathing her and feeding her and changing her and giving up everything that made me who I was. 2 years of being told I was paranoid and exhausted and imagining things. 2 years of thinking I was losing my mind. And the whole time she'd been faking everything. The whole time Matt had known. The accident was fake. The paralysis was fake. My marriage was fake. Everything I thought I knew about my life was a lie they'd constructed together to steal everything I had. All of it. Every single moment for the past 2 years. Every sweet smile and kind word and fake apology. All of it was a scheme to break me down until I filed for divorce and handed them half of everything my grandparents had worked their entire lives to give me. I felt my hands curl into fists at my sides. I felt my jaw clench so tight my teeth ached. I felt rage pouring through my veins like liquid fire, burning away the exhaustion, burning away the self-doubt, burning away every single moment I'd ever wondered if maybe I was the crazy one. They had no idea I was standing 10 feet away from them, and I was done hiding in the shadows. I stood in that hallway listening to them laugh together, listening to Sandy pour wine on 2 perfectly working legs, listening to Matt talk about my house and my inheritance like it already belonged to him. 2 years. 2 years I gave to that woman. 2 years of my life and my career and my sanity. They thought they were going to break me until I filed for divorce and handed them everything. They had no idea I was standing 10 feet away hearing every word, and I was done hiding. I stepped into the kitchen doorway and let them see me. Sandy saw me first. Her wine glass stopped halfway to her lips, and her whole body went completely rigid. Her face went through about 5 different expressions in the span of 2 seconds. Surprise, fear, panic, and then a desperate attempt to look confused that didn't fool anyone, including herself. Then Matt turned around in his chair and his face lost every drop of color, like someone had reached inside him and drained all the blood out at once. His mouth fell open, but no sound came out. He just sat there staring at me like I was a ghost who'd risen from the dead. Aurora. My name came out of his mouth like a croak, like he was choking on the letters. What are you? I thought you were at your sister's place. I didn't answer him. I was looking at Sandy, at her legs, at the way she was sitting in a regular kitchen chair like a regular person who had never needed a wheelchair a single day in her miserable life. Don't get up on my account, I said. My voice was steady and calm. I barely recognized it as my own. Actually, keep standing, since apparently you've been doing that perfectly fine for 2 years while I destroyed my back lifting your supposedly paralyzed body in and out of that wheelchair. Sandy recovered faster than Matt did. She always was the smarter one of the two. She set down her wine glass carefully on the table and folded her hands in front of her and tried to give me that same sweet smile she'd been using to manipulate me since the day she moved into my house. Sweetheart, she said in that honey voice, I can explain everything. Can you? Can you explain how you've been walking around my house at night while I spent my days bathing you like you were a helpless baby? Can you explain how you've been standing at my kitchen counter drinking my wine while I gave up my entire career to be your full-time nurse? Can you explain any of that, Sandy? Because I would really love to hear what kind of explanation makes any of this okay. It's not what it looks like. I laughed, and the sound was sharp and ugly, and I didn't care at all. It's not what it looks like. I just stood in that hallway for 20 minutes listening to every word you said. I heard you admit the paralysis was fake. I heard you say you've been waiting 4 years to make me pay for not letting you control my wedding. I heard Matt say he's going to take half of everything I own once I crack and file for divorce. I tilted my head and looked at her with all the hatred I'd been suppressing for 4 years. Please, tell me what it actually looks like. I'm absolutely fascinated to hear your explanation. Sandy's sweet expression cracked and fell away. Underneath it, I could finally see the real her, the one my grandmother had warned me about, the one with ice in her veins who smiled while she sharpened the knife. You don't understand what it's like, she started. I understand perfectly. You're a bitter, pathetic old woman who couldn't stand that your son married someone who didn't worship the ground you walked on. So you spent 4 years holding a grudge like it was your most precious possession, and then you came up with this sick, twisted plan to destroy my entire life and steal my inheritance. Matt stood up from the table. His chair scraped against the floor with an ugly sound. He held his hands out in front of him like he was approaching a dangerous animal he was trying to calm down. Aurora, babe, let's just calm down and talk about this rationally. Calm down. You want me to calm down right now? I know this looks really bad. This looks bad. This looks bad, Matt. I laughed again, and it sounded completely unhinged even to my own ears. That's what you have to say to me right now. That's the best excuse you can come up with after I just caught you red-handed. Just let me explain the situation. Explain what exactly? Explain how you've been lying to me for 2 straight years. Explain how you watched me quit my job and destroy my body and lose my mind taking care of your mother who was never actually paralyzed. Explain how you told me I was crazy and paranoid and needed therapy every single time I noticed something was wrong. My voice got louder with every word. I was shaking with rage now, and I couldn't stop it. Didn't want to stop it. This anger was the only thing keeping me standing upright. It wasn't supposed to go on this long. Matt said desperately. His voice cracked in the middle like a teenager going through puberty. It was just supposed to be a few months. Long enough for you to get frustrated and overwhelmed. Long enough for you to decide you didn't want to be married to me anymore. But you kept going. You kept taking care of her. You just wouldn't break no matter what we did. So this is my fault now. I'm too resilient. I'm too committed to my marriage. I'm too determined to be a good wife and daughter-in-law. That's the problem here. That's not what I'm saying. Then what are you saying, Matt? Make it make sense for me. Explain to your wife why you and your mother have been running a con on her for 2 years. Explain why you let me think I was losing my mind. Explain why you told me I needed therapy for noticing that something was obviously wrong. Matt opened his mouth and closed it again without saying anything. He had nothing. No excuse good enough to justify any of this. No lie smooth enough to talk his way out of it. For once in his entire life, he was completely speechless. Sandy stood up from the table. She moved smoothly and gracefully like she'd never had a single problem with her legs. Like the wheelchair collecting dust in the corner of my living room was just a prop in the elaborate play she'd been performing for the past 2 years. You want to know why I did this? Sandy said. Her voice was different now. Harder. Colder. No more pretending to be sweet. This was the real Sandy. The one who'd been hiding behind that helpless old woman act the entire time. Because you humiliated me. You looked me in the face and told me I had no say in my own son's wedding. You dismissed every single suggestion I made like I was nobody. You treated me like I was invisible. I didn't let you control my wedding. That's why you destroyed 2 years of my life. You didn't let me have anything. Not the venue, not the flowers, not the guest list, not the music, not a single thing. You took my son from me and then you shut me out of the most important day of his life completely. You made all the decisions without me and you smiled while you did it. It was our wedding, Sandy. Mine and Matt's, not yours. Parents don't get to control their adult children's weddings just because they think they should. He's my son. Sandy's voice rose to something close to a scream. Her face was red and twisted with 4 years of resentment finally boiling over. I raised him completely alone. I sacrificed everything I had for him. His father left when he was 2 years old and walked out on both of us, and I did everything by myself. Every scraped knee, every nightmare, every school project, every football game. I was there for all of it. Me, nobody else. And you came along and made me feel like none of that mattered. Like I was just some obstacle in the way of your perfect life. I stared at her. 4 years of pretending to tolerate me. 2 years of pretending to be paralyzed. Thousands of hours of my time and energy and sanity poured down the drain. All because she didn't get to pick the centerpieces at my wedding reception. You're completely insane, I said quietly. You're actually clinically insane. I'm a mother who was wronged by someone who should have respected me. And I waited 4 years for the perfect opportunity to get what I deserved. What you deserved. You stole 2 years of my life. You made me think I was going crazy. You had me bathing you and feeding you and changing your adult diapers while you laughed about it behind my back with my own husband. And you stole my son from me. So I'd say we're about even now. I turned to look at Matt. He was still standing there with his hands at his sides, looking like he wanted to dissolve into the floor and disappear forever. And you, I said. You went along with every single part of this. You watched me suffer every single day for 2 years and you never said a word. You told me I was paranoid. You told me I needed professional help. You made me think I was the problem in this marriage. I didn't know it would go this far, Matt said weakly. His voice was barely above a whisper. I thought it would be a few months and then you'd file for divorce and I'd get my share of the house and the money and we'd both move on with our lives. I didn't think you'd actually keep going for this long. Your share? Your share of what exactly? The house my grandparents left me. The money they worked their entire lives to save. You think you're entitled to any of that. We're married. What's yours is mine. That's how marriage works legally. So that was the plan all along. Make my life so unbearable that I file for divorce first. Then you get half of everything because I'm the one who left. Because I'm the one who couldn't take it anymore. Very clever. Matt didn't deny any of it. He just stood there staring at the floor like a child who'd been caught stealing from the cookie jar. Whose idea was this whole thing? I demanded. Was it yours, or was it hers? He was quiet for a long moment. Then he gestured toward Sandy without looking at her. It was Mom's idea. The paralysis scheme. The fake accident. She came up with all of it after she found out about your inheritance. Oh, don't you dare. Sandy jabbed her finger at him with fury in her eyes. Don't you dare try to put this all on me. You were more than happy to go along with every part of it. You were the one who said we needed to push harder and move faster. You were the one who kept telling me Aurora was getting close to cracking. You wanted that money just as much as I wanted revenge for what she did to me. You wanted the money too. Don't pretend you're some innocent victim in this. I wanted justice. The money was just a bonus. I watched them turn on each other like rats fighting over scraps. Mother and son, partners in crime, already looking for someone else to blame now that their scheme had fallen apart. 2 years of my life, I said quietly. They both stopped arguing and turned to look at me. 2 years I'm never going to get back. 2 years of thinking I was losing my mind. 2 years of being told I was paranoid and exhausted and imagining things. You both did this to me together. You both watched me fall apart piece by piece and you didn't care at all. You were counting on it. Matt's expression crumbled slightly. For just a second, he almost looked like the man I'd fallen in love with and married. Almost looked like he might actually feel bad about what he'd done. I'm sorry, he said. I really am. I never wanted it to go this far. Things just got out of control. But you didn't stop it either. You watched me suffer every single day, and you didn't say a single word. You could have ended this at any point. You could have told me the truth. You chose not to because you wanted my money more than you ever wanted me. I didn't know how to get out of it once we started. The longer it went on, the harder it got to tell the truth. I was trapped. So you were just going to let it keep going forever until I finally broke completely. He didn't answer. The truth was written all over his face. I looked at both of them standing in my kitchen. My husband, who had never really loved me for a single day of our marriage. His mother, who had been planning my destruction since the moment I said I do. 2 people who had smiled at me and hugged me and told me I was family, while they plotted to take everything I had. Get out of my house, I said. Sandy laughed like I'd told a joke. Excuse me. Get out of my house. Both of you. Right now. Tonight. You can't just kick us out, Matt said. I live here too. This has been my home for years. This is my house. My grandparents left it to me. My name is on the deed. My name is on everything. You don't own a single thing here except your clothes and your collection of lies. We're married. I have legal rights to this property. You have the right to leave before I call the police and report you both for fraud and theft and whatever else I can think of. 2 years of scheming to steal my inheritance has to be worth something in court. That got their attention. Sandy's confident expression wavered for the first time since I'd walked into the room. Matt's face went even paler than it already was. You can't prove any of this, Sandy said quickly. It's your word against ours. Nobody's going to believe you. Maybe not, but I'm willing to try. I'm willing to spend every single cent of that inheritance my grandparents left me to make sure you both pay for what you've done. Are you willing to bet everything that I won't? Sandy's jaw tightened. Matt looked like he was about to be sick all over the kitchen floor. Here's what's going to happen, I continued. My voice was steady and calm, and I felt more in control than I had in 2 years. You're both going to leave this house tonight. You're going to pack whatever you can carry, and you're going to get out and you're never going to come back. And then I'm going to call a lawyer first thing tomorrow morning and figure out how to make sure neither of you ever sees a penny of my grandparents' money. You can't do this to us, Matt said weakly. Watch me. Now get out of my house. You have 15 minutes to grab whatever you need. Everything else goes in the trash. Sandy took a step toward me with her hands clenched into fists at her sides. For a second, I thought she might actually try to hit me. You ungrateful little nothing, she hissed. 10 minutes, I said without flinching. Every minute you waste arguing with me is a minute less you have to pack your things. They both stared at me. I stared right back without blinking. For 2 years, I'd been the doormat, the caretaker, the devoted wife who put everyone else's needs before her own. I'd made myself smaller and smaller to fit into whatever tiny space they allowed me to occupy. Not anymore. Never again. Clock's ticking, I said. Matt moved first. He walked past me without making eye contact and went down the hall toward our bedroom. I heard drawers opening and clothes being thrown into bags. The sound of my marriage ending one handful of shirts at a time. Sandy didn't move right away. She stood in the kitchen with her arms crossed over her chest and her face twisted with pure hatred. You're going to regret this for the rest of your life, she said in a low voice. I have friends. I have connections. I can make things very difficult for you. You already made things difficult for me. For 2 straight years. And you know what I learned from that experience. I'm a lot harder to break than you ever thought I was. Sandy's lip curled up in disgust. You were never good enough for my son. And your son was never good enough for me. Now get out of my house before I physically throw you out myself. She held my gaze for a long moment, testing me, trying to find any weakness she could dig her nails into, any crack in my armor she could exploit. She didn't find one. Finally, she turned and walked away down the hallway. Her footsteps were loud against the hardwood floors. No more shuffling. No more pretending she couldn't walk. She moved like what she really was. A perfectly healthy woman who had been playing the most elaborate and cruel game imaginable. I stood in my kitchen and listened to them pack their things. I heard them arguing in low, angry voices. I heard Matt ask Sandy what they were supposed to do now. I heard Sandy snap at him to shut up and focus on getting out before I changed my mind and called the police. 15 minutes later, they walked out the front door with bags in their hands. Matt stopped on the porch and turned back to look at me one last time. His face was a mess of conflicting emotions. Guilt, anger, desperation, self-pity. Aurora, he said. I really am sorry. For what it's worth. It's not worth anything, I told him. Goodbye, Matt. I closed the door in his face before he could say anything else. In the end, Matt got nothing. Not the house, not the inheritance money, not a single cent of what my grandparents worked their whole lives for.